We got to talk Renegades, guys. We got to talk Renegades. In order to talk about Renegades, though, let us first go to Tharsis, where this expansion takes place. Hold on. Let me load up real quick. The time of this recording, it is Friday, December the 5th, a few days after the launch of Renegades. We've jumped in, we've had our experience, we've played the campaign, we've played the reactivity, we've hit max reputation. The only thing we're really waiting on at this point is for the dungeon, which won't be out until next Saturday. Today, though, I wanted to really just have a discussion on what was great about Renegades, what was good about Renegades, and then what was ultimately bad about this expansion. Let's start, though, with the things that were great. I think something many of you noticed as soon as you loaded up Destiny, once this expansion was live, was the music. And I know some people are like, Cross, why are you glazing the music all the time? Look, the music was good. Michael Salvatore was back. They cooked. There was obviously like a lot of Star Wars inspiration in the music, but it meshed really well with Destiny. And, you know, it just had that little splash of nostalgia as you were playing missions. I really enjoyed the music. Story spoilers. I'm going to have some light spoilers, but I'm going to be talking around it. So you should be good. So music, great. The cast of VAs, fantastic. Well, I always I'm just a big fan of Drifter and Ares being involved, but I really like Drifter's Ghost Blue. That was a surprising VA there, but really, really liked her. And I also liked Bell a lot, who's like the big bad guy or the main bad guy. But then there's also Gold 2.0 there. He's in the mix as well. But I would say the cast of voice actors were really, really solid. And I enjoyed just listening to the dialogue between them. In that same vein, and I'm going to kind of be jumping around between like good, bad, great. As great as the voice acting was, there was not enough of it. And the reason why I bring this up is because there are 3 syndicates that are present here at the Tharsis outpost. And to me, it was a big letdown that they did not have their own VAs. When you, like the first time I saw the trailer of this Rao guy, right? I was like, dude, I cannot wait to just see what he has to say. Or she. I could not wait to hear these VAs for all these different syndicates. But we didn't get to hear that. And I know someone's going to bring up the lore here. They're going to be like, Cross, no, she's a psychic. She talks, she puts images in your mind. Look, that. All right, I want to hear her voice. You know who else's voice I want to hear in some version? I guess the Vex doesn't really have a voice. You know what I mean? But like Tharsis Reformation here, I would have loved to gotten a little more other than just like, you know, I'm having to read text. You know what I'm saying? And the same with the Pikers game. I just feel like the voice acting was fantastic, but just not enough of it. I wanted that, especially for the syndicates. I think Spider absolutely carries in the Lawless Frontier activity in terms of like hearing his voice come in and listening to the things he has to say. I think Spider always kills it. More Spider is always a good thing. But I was expecting, considering we're in this, we're dealing with the Lawless Frontier. We have all these corrupt individuals. Like I kind of wanted a more flavor from each of the syndicates. And that could have been showcased through them having their own VAs of some sort. You know, even if it was just like a Vex making like R2-D2 noises at us. All right. I'm trying to think of what else was great. I think that's pretty much it. Now this takes us to good. What was good? I think the new activity Lawless Frontier is really good. I think the Renegade abilities are good. And I mean, hell, I could even say really good. Like the Renegade abilities are Helldiver level abilities, especially once you get like the upgrades. Like I call one of them Eagle Strike, the strafe run, and it's because it's on that level. Each one of them have massive tangible benefits for upgrading them. And that's why you would pledge to each of these syndicates, because you're able to upgrade those Renegade abilities. Your behemoth that starts off at base substantially improves to its final form. The same with your strafe run, the same even with your recon shank that you call in. I mean, you can get an upgrade on your recon shank where essentially it can ping invaders, so you know when someone's about to invade you, know their exact location, literally puts up a mark for them. And so I think the Renegade abilities, like if I was to compare them to Edge of Fate abilities, substantially more fun and they're just cooler, man. I mean, they're fun enough that I wish I could take them outside of just Lawless Frontier. I think the activity Lawless Frontier itself is pretty well done. I've had to sit down and really wrap my head around like how all the systems work, because you have these 3 destinations. No, they're not patrol spaces, but they each have their own little territories that are essentially pitting these different syndicates against each other. One being contested, which allows for invasion. So that allows for another player to invade your team and to go against your team. And I think Bungie's done a really good job of threading the needle here for invasions. A lot of PvE players completely detest PvP. But invasions are good because you only have to deal with it at the very beginning of a match. And everyone has renegade abilities. So it's not just like, hey, someone's going to invade you and use an Izanagi and go for one-shot body shots, which they can do. But with all the different things you have at your disposal, you can drop a behemoth, you could do a Vex deflector dome, you can of course use your weapons in your subclass. Like there's a variety of ways to counter invaders. And if you have, you know, your team actually consolidate and just look where the invader is, 9 times out of 10 you'll kill the invader, no problem. And for me, I like the whole aspect of invading too, because you can go over here and you can wager these death marks and increase your drops. Really cool stuff, man. I think Bungie's done a really good job with this activity. Now, am I going to play it for the next 6 months? Probably not. Hell, right now, you know, we're already max rep with one syndicate, and that's not even us optimizing. Now we know how to optimize, and we'll probably get max rep by next week. And so I'm probably really only going to play this for a couple weeks, and then I'll be jumping into the dungeon. And I know that's going to put a lot of emphasis on how good the dungeon is. And yes, depending on what the dungeon is, that could, I'm not going to say make or break, but it can definitely either elevate this expansion by maybe I had a rating system by maybe a point. But if it comes down to shit, and that's all we have left to do, you know, for the next, I wouldn't say 6 months, but 3 months until whatever happens in March, that's going to suck. That's going to suck. Other things that are good, I think Bungie, they did really good as far as providing us like a ton of weapons to chase. And they've also done really good by providing us weapons that have double origin traits. So kind of like what they did back in Heresy, you can actually get a double origin trait drop. So if you guys are farming and you see a weapon drop on you that's already masterwork, it will most likely have this accelerated assault origin trait. Think of this as like the runneth over being present on your weapons back during Heresy. And that's what makes a god roll a god roll. You have not just the 5 out of 5 god roll, but you've got this origin trait that tacks on even more potency to the weapon. And so what extends the grind for me is like, all right, yeah, I've got the tier 5 here, but what if I got the tier 5 with accelerated assault? So I think Bungie's done a really good job with the loot so far. And you actually have to kind of like work your way up to get to tier 5s. You pretty much have to get the upgrade with Spider if you want consistent tier 5s, which requires you to max out your reputation. But after that, they start to pour in, and we're going to continue to be farming. But that's really what's going to keep me into Lawless Frontier is, hey, how many of these god rolls can I get that can also drop with accelerated assault? And I will also say this, they're pretty rare. So if you get a tier 4 version, I would honestly not shred it. I know everybody here is like tier 5 or bust, but you know, like this particular role, I'm keeping it. Now before we even move to the bad, I guess, let me just touch on, I guess, neutral things that I'm about. So I think the story was good, but I think the structure of the story, where the beginning, it started off very, very strong. You're inside of the ship. Yes, obviously there's some areas in there that are similar to Presage. I know some people are saying it's completely Presage. I don't know. I didn't look that deeply, but I really enjoyed that first opening mission. The middle portion of the campaign has us going into Lawless Frontier a lot, which is fine because it's a tutorial process, but there's a lot of like almost like fetch quests of like you end up coming back here to Tharsis a lot and opening up all the dialogue here and all the little story beats. And so it's just a lot of like going back and forth, like loading into Lawless Frontier, coming back here, talking to someone, loading back up in, you know what I mean? And again, this is all part of the tutorial process to get you on board, but it wasn't a continuation of that first mission structure. And I would say that the other thing that was also kind of an issue is like you chose legendary campaign. And in the past, for something like that, the whole campaign experience would be legendary. Whereas in Renegades, it would be legendary, but then when you went into the activities, there was no legendary mode for that. You would actually have to go and manually click expert. And then when you went back and actually got ready to do the next mission, the actual missions, that would not be in legendary. It would sometimes even load you back in a normal. So it wasn't as like seamless as say like a Witch Queen campaign experience, which I know is a lot more linear, and a lot of people say they don't like linear, but that mission structure was like, hey, here it is. You click legendary, you're going to have mission after mission after mission. And then after the mission is when you approach those post-campaign activities, which in this case would be Lawless Frontier. What Bungie has really done with Renegades is they've consolidated Lawless Frontier, which is really a post-campaign activity, and the exotic mission, which was a very cool mission. Yes, that's mixed into the campaign as well. They consolidated that into the campaign, which also makes the campaign feel pretty long. I mean, it took us roughly 8 hours. We weren't necessarily trying to speed through it, but it makes the campaign feel a lot longer. The legendary campaign was a cakewalk. Oh, that's another thing I want to bring up. The legendary campaign was also extremely easy. I don't know what Bungie's done on their end as far as tweaking difficulty goes, but it was really easy. And like, I'm not even speaking like, yes, I know we're very strong and we're very powerful and everybody's like rocking like exotics that just got massively upgraded and massively buffed. But even me rocking like older non-meta loadouts, I just found that the legendary campaign was just way easier than previous legendary campaigns. If you remember back in the day for like, again, I bring up Witch Queen again, but doing legendary Witch Queen, that stuff, it was no joke, man. Like taking out Savathun at the end on legendary was hard. It's challenging. This campaign definitely didn't have that level of challenge. I think it's because of the power reset that was supposed to happen. Maybe that could have been it. Somebody's bringing up no mythic. Could be that too. I just noticed that it wasn't that challenging. And I think that is in my opinion, a bad thing. I think a good thing was the story. I enjoyed the story. You know, you had a lot of parallels with Star Wars. I'm gonna throw it out there. I'm not trying to spoil too much. You had the Guardian Killer. Here's where I have an issue with the story. There is a lore piece, and if somebody can collect me this lore piece, and I guess we are entering some spoiler territory right here. If somebody can collect me the lore piece about Belle's mother. All right. I've known Mother to be dead for longer than I knew her alive. I remember small moments, falling asleep on her shoulder as she carried me home at night after a holiday party, teaching me to swim, singing as she washed dishes. I remember feeling safe with her, even when Father shouted. Her voice would silence him, protecting me, memories that comforted me, until I saw her. The market at Bonnet Plaza in the West District. I was getting lunch outside of the Mechanica office. Kaido's logisticians, Father's lick spittles, hiccups at factories 3 and 4, and a miserable day. I'd interred her. She was Ash, but in this moment, I saw my mother moving through the crowd with her ghost flitting around her head. She had been dead for 3 years at this point. Somehow, the light had found her. It seems all it needed was Ash. 2 others chosen by the light marched at her side, bristling with weapons, leashed to their puppeteers. The chosen on some holy business to save humanity. She glowed, flushed with heat, as if the fire that had cremated her now animated her from within. I cried out in horror, unable to stop myself. It made sense, of course. The traveler would grant my beloved mother the gift every child in the last city dreams of, every dying elder longs for, as they move away from the main of life, eternal life without fear. But when I embraced her, crying her name at the center of a cheering crowd, what did my mother do? She shoved me away. Guys, when I read lore entries like this, Bungie, we gotta have a cutscene of this, man. A lot of people are like, Belle is so whiny toward like the end of the campaign. Everything made so much sense. And you gotta ask it. I mean, we talked about this yesterday. Imagine a loved one of yours dying. And in this case, you were a child and your mother died and she comes back and she no longer recognizes you and doesn't even just not recognize you, but pushes you away. It makes sense. And it makes you realize that Belle's crash out is completely valid. I still think like Belle's delivery was still good, but I think this would have pushed it to great. Is what I'm saying here, guys. Anyways, I'm not going to continue reading it, but that's essentially Belle's backstory and the way he is. The kid needs to grow up. Lol. You feel good about yourself? Huh? You feel good? That make you feel strong? Oh, your mother died? Grow the fuck up! You feel good? You piece of shit. You know that? You heartless motherfucker. Big man telling a kid to grow the fuck up. She died, oh shit. Oh, did y'all not understand that from the lore post? All right, again, let me repeat myself. This is why I think these lore pieces, these lore pages would make incredible cutscenes. Belle was a child. His father, head of Tex Mechanica, a mother who protected and loved him, died, obviously from a fire. What happens? He continues growing up without his mother, missing her dearly, until one day he sees her. She's there in front of him. Yet when he runs up to her and embraces her and calls her mother, she shoves him away. Because why? She's a guardian now, and guardians don't retain their memories. She is no longer his mother. She's just using her corpse. Or in this case, the light is just using her corpse. Guys, does nobody realize what the f we are? We're zombies. Like, no, straight up. You think there's something magical about us? Yes, our ghosts are kind of quirky, but every fucking one of us, we're zombies. All right, so That's the kind of thing that would have pushed this to great. But I love that we have lore pieces like that. Maybe we get something like that in the future. Now, this also takes me to some of the bad things. And I know I've already touched on a few bad things, like not having the Syndicates voice acted. Other bad things. And I feel like we say the same thing every expansion. But dude, the bugs, you know, people were getting soft locked in the campaign. I had many of you come by the stream and say, hey, I'm stuck on this step. I can't do anything. I'm soft locked right now. And yes, Bungie eventually put out ways you can work around it. But man, it's stuff like that that can really, especially if you're like, hey, I've got a set amount of time. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to play a video game. The last thing you want to do is to be in the middle of your gaming session, especially if it's your only gaming session for that week, and then you get soft locked. I'm trying to remember what else is bad. Oh, other bad. And this one's not necessarily apparent right now. Right now, we're still kind of living in the honeymoon phase, right? I'm having a good time. We're all having a good time. We're doing build battles. We're prepping for the dungeon. But we're going to be in a very similar situation as we were in pre-Renegades here next week and the week after and the week after. And this is where seasonal stories mattered. The population of this expansion was the lowest any expansion has ever been. But to be quite honest with you guys, it doesn't surprise me one bit. It's not that I don't think Renegades is good. I think Renegades is good. I really do. But there was no bridge. There was no narrative bridge. We don't have any type of seasonal story that people tune into week to week. I always bring up Into the Light and Final Shape, but Final Shape would not have been successful without Into the Light. That Into the Light Pantheon served as that bridge. Now, Bungie's version of the bridge going into a new expansion is the things like the Call to Arms event, right? And although a fun event, narratively, which I think people do not give enough credit to, narratively, it offers nothing. So now we're about to, we just experienced the campaign. I don't think we're going to have any type of seasonal story beats after this. We're going to have content, but we're going to run through that pretty quickly. It's mainly just the dungeon that we have left and the dawning event. But I don't really know what else is going to be fleshed out, especially considering that we have this outpost and everything else. Like, I don't know what's going to be fleshed out over the course of these next 3 months. Because yes, we'll have our second version of like Ash and Iron come March, but it'll be for this expansion right here. Y'all hated the slow story rollout? Yeah, but guys, y'all say that. We hated the slow story rollout. We went from slow to nothing. You know what I mean? That's not the alternative that we were asking for. I personally just thought that some stories just weren't that interesting. And so it wasn't necessarily an issue of it being a slow rollout. It's just, man, people weren't that interested in Maya. You know what I'm coming from? But how many of you tuned in for the week-to-week stuff for Heresy? And Heresy pulled some good numbers. I think if I was to judge Renegades in a vacuum, I think it's a strong enough expansion with the, I think if you're a fan of Star Wars, you're going to find yourself enjoying this one. But over the long term, I don't know how much staying power Lawless Frontier is going to have for us. I've not played PvP, but I have not heard good things about PvP. But let's just be real. Bungie does not really care about Destiny PvP at this moment. Anyone at Bungie that is PvP minded is working on Marathon. That is the priority PvP game right now. And yeah, I hope the dungeon's good. And I would say a lot of things are going to rest on the dungeon being good. Vault space was a great change. Dude, the vault space, the vault upgrade, adding the six-man activity in the portal. They got a portal right here, and I'm not a big fan of the portal, but they got arena here where you can do six-man activities. I like that everything here in Renegades, all these activities, you got matchmaking. You've got matchmaking in this thing. Granted, if you wanted to play private, you can. So if you wanted to go in solo, you definitely can. And if you want to play expert, you could do that too. But I like the matchmaking being on for everything, which again, I've always said, Bungie, just turn on matchmaking for everything. Just turn it on for everything. The problem is when you have so many customizable modifiers, it's so hard to get everyone on the same page. But you see, there's like, Bungie is doing a consolidation there of modifiers. So, Renegades, I think it's a good enough expansion. By the way, I know we're not necessarily looking for good enough, but I can be honest with you, like, I was hoping for good enough. All right. But like I said in our original talk about Renegades, the core issues that are facing Destiny, I just don't think Renegades is going to be able to, we'll see what shakes out, but I think that is going to take until the next cycle, until the next annual expansion. And I guess this really brings to the question, will Bungie give Destiny to another Forsaken? And I don't know if they will. They mentioned the Alchemist. The Alchemist was mentioned literally in this campaign, which we know that the next annual expansion, I say annual expansion, but the next big expansion leads into that. But I don't expect there to be some sort of like, when I say Forsaken shakeup, I'm talking about where Bungie comes out and gives us just overwhelming amounts of content where they just pour it on us, dude. I don't think that's going to happen. And to be honest with you, and again, nothing's been confirmed whether or not a D3 is being made, but if there was that level of density, that content density, and a D3 was being made, then I would expect that to just be pushed into D3. I think the biggest issue with Destiny 2 right now, and this is what Bungie is going to have to address at some point, if there is in fact a sequel being made, is how much should be put into Destiny 2 while pushing towards a Destiny 3. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to impede or even creatively bankrupt your sequel to keep Destiny 2 alive. And look, the copium me hopes that Bungie could just do both, right? And again, there's a lot of copium going around for this. All I could say, I enjoyed Renegades. I've enjoyed Lawless Frontier. I've enjoyed the Renegade abilities. I think the Praxic Blade is a fantastic weapon. I don't have it on me right now, but I think the lightsaber is fantastic. I've had a lot of fun, and this is coming from someone that's not necessarily a diehard Star Wars fan. I think there's been a lot of good quality of life changes here. I think the fact that you could take an exotic ornament and apply it to any piece, fantastic. My vault, dude, my vault having all these different tabs and customization, like this is really good stuff. These are great quality of life changes here. I think another great thing Bungie did with Renegades is these active orders. So simple and so good. You've got all these various active orders that you can, by the way, you can replace. So you can actually double stack these things if you wish. You can get up to a legendary one. You could re-roll those, and that's how you get things like fragile mods. And you get up to an exotic one, which can give you things like the one of the I think it's the yellow Praxic Blade. Those are just bounties. Yeah, they're bounties, but they're easier. Or I'd say that you don't actively have to go get them. They're repeatable, and you have some control over it. Like if you have some PvP ones, but you're like, no, I'm just going to go do PvE, you can re-roll them. Granted, it increases the cost of them, but I think it's cool. And I think having the RNG aspect of it becoming a legendary is really cool too. Now, again, these are like core game changes, but it mixes in with Renegades. I think the core game has a lot of things that still needs to be addressed, and I don't know how much Bungie's going to be able to address them as time goes on. We'll see, man. We'll see. They're making some swings at it though with these quality of life changes.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.